Hey, Valentina.
Hey, Marcel.
Nice to see you.
Yeah,
Nice to meet you. It's been quite a while that we actually had a talk,
I
and
know.
I'm very excited about this one because we know each other as friends, but then there's also you're also like a productivity powerhouse. Like I know that, but I don't know very much about it. I know you're insane with how much work you used to get done because I think you scaled it down a bit now to not be too overwhelmed. And maybe we can go into that at some point. But yeah, I think you're an incredible person. I'm very excited to dive deeper into that. Have some time for it.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited. Also, really miss talking to you. I think little by little after the years, I can start to see, how they tell you're special not because of your superpower, but the way you blend in your different passions, like that combination
Mm.
to you. I've discovered recently that for me, it is that blend between productivity, decluttering, improving and organizing, and at the same time adding the visual part to it to make it like it goes with the decluttering, but not necessarily. And like that point where all my talents converge is where I really find the energizing activities for me, and definitely productivity is a part of it. And I've had an interesting journey with productivity. I know that I've been in that moment where you're deep into it and like you're all about productivity and then you lose yourself a little bit, right? And then I've been in that point where I cannot seem to find my productivity. I'm like, who am I without my productivity? I'm not Valentina. Everybody knows me for it. And now I'm more experimenting, indeed, after scaling it down a little bit, into finding that sweet balance between understanding that productivity is not everything, especially not if you lose focus of the bigger goals in life because you are just then running one lane very fast whereas the other lanes are behind. And
Mm.
to the end as a team, you get to the end as a family, in life as a couple, maybe with your friends or siblings. And that same thing happens with you as a person. You're not a one lane person. You have different faces of yourself that need to get across the goal. And if you focus on one and you let the other ones behind, you don't get where you want to be because you just feel the opportunity cost of everything you give up to be there. So it's been an interesting journey.
So that's a pattern I can find myself in too. I can sometimes I can get very excited about one thing. Oh my god, do and then we do this, and then you guys jump into that, and then everything else falls to the background. I don't clean the home. I'm like, there's dirty pots and pans in the kitchen at some point. I'll just order takeout because I want to
Yeah.
keep, I don't know, making this video or writing this thing out. And then always at some point it crashes or you just, this is too much or it's everything around me is ugly because if you don't clean, then things get ugly and it doesn't feel good anymore. Okay, so that was a lot to unpack that you were talking about. Let's kind of start chronologically. Were you always organized or did you like organizing? You said decluttering. Are you like this the personality that likes doing it?
Oh, well, that's a super interesting question. I thought about it. Nobody has asked me about it before. I come from a very messy house. My mom is a very chaotic person. She used to be a TV producer. For many years, she started compiling and she would have a TV commercial, a photography session or whatever. And everything that you would buy for the pre-production, she would just keep in the house because maybe you can use it again. And so our home was the most cluttered place you could see. People would come to the house and take bags and bags of stuff to resell in the market, and still you had everything full of things. And I guess I grew up in it, and at some point I get really sick of it, and I was like, it needs to get to that crisis point to be like, okay, I've lived. This is not who I feel comfortable being. And I had to run away from it the most opposite way. So I was not, as a child, I guess no child is naturally organized, but my father did like
There.
battle with to be organized, to have a routine, to have in my space so that I could have clarity in my inside. And I guess it started sinking into me unconsciously because I had that dichotomy of how my mom lived and how I started seeing other people live, like particularly my father and his family. It was the opposite. It was like very structured, very organized. And I started
Your parents were
saying
separated. There
they
was
they
two
were.
different houses.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Since I was a baby. And seeing that dichotomy, seeing how different habits make you like more successful or less successful. And both have pros and cons. I would see my mother was a very happy person. but at the same time, her financial life wouldn't go as planned. Whenever she had to work, it was chaos all over the place. It would take her more time to find anything. My father, he was doing very well in his career. Maybe his happiness wasn't quite there. So I started thinking, like,
Mm.
okay, there are two ways to live life. And I started jumping and hopping between what would suit me the best. And what I did have since a very young age was like the need for completion. So
Mm.
that need for completion translated into a need to get to the bottom of things always. So if I'm learning something, I will not be satisfied with the superficial part of it. I'm going to be like, okay, maybe it's not my topic. And I'm sorry if I'm over asking, but it's just who I am as a person. Can you please like get to the bottom of it so that from the bottom up, I can understand why we're doing something or why something is related. And getting to the bottom of things also meant for me checking and analyzing things. Okay, when you're in your home, and we're talking about physical decluttering here, and there's a space that gives you a little bit of discomfort. So you think, I need to grab a folder, and I know that folder is in the studio room, and your brain goes a little bit. That discomfort signifies there's something there that you must change because you don't feel comfortable in that space. And I started experimenting with it. I'm like, okay, whenever I pile up energy and time, I'm going to go to those places of discomfort and revamp them from scratch. Make it all worse. I can get better. See what is it about that drawer, the cable drawer with the little tools in it. What is it about that drawer that makes me want to like, oh, every time I need to pick something from it. Mm, we don't always have the time to optimize everything, but I do know that at some point it gets so uncomfortable that you ask yourself, does it need to be
Mm.
this uncomfortable? Like this is not what I want for myself. So I made it my mission to help my mother declutter because she just didn't see it. She was just like absolutely comfortable and happy with all the busyness around her. And it's a
What
project.
age were you then? Was that were like really young or already
I
adult?
I think when I first started taking authority in the matter with her,
Mm.
when I was about 14, 13 to 15,
Oh,
more or
okay,
less.
okay.
And it's been a project we've been on even till today. Like today, we're doing
Wow.
yet another round of decluttering with her. And
Oh, I
I,
like that you can take it in bits and pieces. This reminds me of the framework for thinking about the world that I learned in my philosophy class. It's something that's always stuck with me. One of my favorite classes. Where it's like it was talking about the history of philosophy of science, as in how do we know that we know things, right? And before, like in Middle Age and stuff, people would think that we have these basic formulas, right? So we start with the fundamental laws of physics, and then on top of that, we build and we build and we architect this model of reality. But then as humanity progressed, we learned that, wait, we're not actually that good at figuring out what we know. It seems like sometimes these fundamental, like the laws of Newton, with speed and things keep moving. When you get to quantum physics, they're wrong, but then still they work. So it's like, how do you work with those two things at the same time? And he's like, the better way to think about reality is like a raft. You're in the middle of the sea on a raft. It's like this dinky thing. It's made of all little bits and pieces. Some bits look nicer than others. And like you cannot take apart the raft because you would drown. But what you can do is you can look at little parts of it and then say, okay, I'm going to take this out. I'm going to turn this out. I'm going to look at it in the context of everything else. And then you put it back. And that's how you keep your model of reality. And it's kind of the same what you're doing. Like you take this drawer in the kitchen that you see is messed up. Right? You take it out and you organize it. And then it's all nice. This is good. But then maybe 2 weeks later, notice, wait, I'm in the studio and this thing should be in the drawer in the kitchen. And then you like take those things together. And then once the thing in the studio, once it's in the studio, then you're like, oh wait, maybe those two things need to be organized together. That's interesting. An interesting approach.
well,
Okay,
the
I
example
like it.
you
I
share,
like it.
it could sound a little overwhelming because it's okay. There's so much to do that, like, why bother? And I guess that's a question everybody should ask themselves. Like, it's just a
Mm.
matter of where do you feel comfortable to know you can operate to your highest potential. Some people do work and operate really well in a different level of organization. Like not everything needs to be squeaky clean and tidy. And some others like me, we just know I have a decluttered space. I have a decluttered desk. I know I am more creative and I'm more focused. But not everybody in this world is about productivity. And so that's an interesting question. For some others,
Okay.
the goal of life may not be productivity, but rather
Mhm.
diving deep into the chaos and seeing what comes from it. And I think that's what makes it's
Yeah.
magical, like the fact that we are so different. And I wouldn't have the skills to do that. I would just bang my head against the wall, right? But my mom, she like thrives at it.
Oh, yeah, I get that. I think I can handle some chaos, but then there's other things like if my I have this sense of for aesthetics
Hmm.
or design. If my environment is ugly, then that can really frustrate.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, oh, there's this ugly thing on my desk that I need to see all the time. I'm just like, this needs to go in the trash bin. I'm sorry, someone gave this to me, but it's just no.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good point. I
That,
wrote down
that
your thing. If your brain goes a little bit, bzz, that's the trigger.
Yeah, it's like whenever you give yourself a chore and you go, oh, there's a reason for that. Oh, this shouldn't be there. Because I believe nothing, we're not in the world of being physicists or mathematicians or like, we're not in the high sciences realm. So nothing the average person really does on a daily life is hard. It's just tedious. And how do we reduce the
Mm,
friction? If you translate the same concept, it could be decluttering the knowledge. Like sometimes we find things difficult at work and we find that they give us a task and we're like, oh, that financial report again. What is it about the financial report that's bothering me? I do it month after month. If there's something bothering me, perhaps it's not optimized. Perhaps we're doing something
mm,
unnecessary, or perhaps it's not making a lot of sense. There's no S&P, it's not properly explained. And I believe there is always something you could declutter digitally, physically, or in terms of knowledge in order to get to that productivity where you're like, and it's not a matter of running and rushing. A lot of people see productivity as 3, 2, 1, go, get as much done as you can. And I'm starting to see
mhm.
productivity more as 3, 2, 1, go. And you know you have the right tools and everything prepared because you gave yourself that gift. Like when you are on a trip, like if you're on a trip and you just take every day out of your suitcase, you know that every single day of that trip, you're gonna lose 5 minutes to figure out what you're gonna wear, what would go through, or you're
Yeah.
gonna lose on aesthetics. But if you the first day of the trip take 1 hour to unpack the whole thing and organize it. So it's quid pro quo. Like you see what works best for you, but there's always an opportunity cost to it. And whatever system you set up for yourself since the beginning ends up reflecting in how you experience a holiday, the most repetitive tasks of your work, or
Yeah.
sitting down and just anything.
It's interesting how you take this you have a very pragmatic approach and a very feeling focused approach too, right? You just know the bits where it is. Have you gone through the over decluttering things, like having like being only there and God, there's no more room for anything else. Or I need to make everything perfect.
I've been there, and that's I think it's also not a nice space to be because have you ever seen this Disney movie Soul?
I don't think so. That's the
Okay.
one with the emotions, right? They're represented as characters.
No, that's Inside Out. That's the
Or
one where there's like a
okay.
jazz. He plays piano and he's like wondering about life. So, just long story short, they depict it beautifully because they say there's a very thin line between being in the zone and getting obsessed and becoming like a trapped soul. So a lot of people they
Mm,
get in the zone with their passion, whether that is playing piano, dancing, whatever, and then they obsess a little bit to like they want too much. They don't stop. They don't give themselves the space and then it becomes an obsession and then it's no longer enjoyable and then they become sad souls that are trapped into the routine of what used to be their passion and used to bring them so much happiness. I have found about myself that when I'm stressed, one of the best treats I can give to myself, and it's great because you need a desk break from your computer, right? So it's a way to
mm,
stretch. Just go and find 5 things that are out of place and put them in their place. And don't do it like you have 5 seconds to do it. No, just take the time to say, oh, what is this? Oh, is this still serving a purpose in me in my life? Is it still
mm.
making me happy? Like Marie Kondo says, is this sparking joy in my life? Oh, let me put it back. Is this the most optimal space this could be in? If you take the time to be present while you organize, it really becomes a ritual of bringing consciousness into your life. And if you do it that way, you cannot possibly have everything absolutely tidy all the time, especially not when you have kids, when you have a visitor. So it's a matter of finding the balance in which you feel comfortable. One day you're gonna dive deep and like revamp and reset everything, and it's just gonna like
Mhm.
decay. It's the nature of things. Like look at radioactivity, decay, life, decay. We get old, we get things get stained. It's just a matter of maintenance through love. When I found myself overly obsessed with this has to be here, and this is the system by which we store things, and here are the pens. I that
Yeah.
obsession was taking away the nice part of it, and I was just finding myself getting stressed and frustrated, especially at other people that hadn't chosen to go on this journey with me, that I was imposing it on them. So I think it really should not be approached as a must reach goal, but more as a habit for mindfulness. And
Mm.
if you really are on a day where your mind needs a break, you're going to find that you're not going to want to organize 5 things, but take some more time. And then sometimes 2 hours pass and you then just feel better in your space and you had fun. And it didn't feel
Yeah.
like a chore, right? And the same with the computer. I have reminders on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, where I locate the clutter in my phone, organize the pictures on
Oh,
Google Photos so that I know whether, they were taken on a particular, whether it's documents or things I need to delete. I have decluttering reminders, many of which come from people like Ali Abdal, like tips and tricks,
okay.
just to make sure that not only am I having a light footprint here in my house, but also a light digital footprint. And that whenever I feel like taking a break, things are not gonna be like hammering on me, right?
Rumor on me, as in you feel that like the open loop think there's something that is not okay. That's what you mean?
Yeah, it's like there are some things. Some people think like you should do things on a first come, first served basis. But you can call it the frog of the day. There's always that one task.
Yeah.
It's like maybe there's one noisy person that really wants you to do something now. And even though they came with it last minute, they're being so noisy and they're stressing you. It became the
Mm.
frog of the day because as soon as you get that done, the rest of your day goes easy. So
That's a
there's,
good way to look at the frog, actually. I was always seeing in the terms of the most difficult thing
yeah.
or the thing you don't want to do, or it can be simple but still like annoying. For example, you need to tell someone that you need to cancel something, right? It's like, I don't want this. But that's also okay because someone is noisy and it's on your mind all the time, that's actually a good way to think about it. I do
So
find
that's the
myself
thing.
sometimes
Like,
just
sorry, go
I
ahead.
find myself sometimes procrastinating on things because I don't want to do them. And then, or they stay unread on my phone and you see it every single time you're opening your phone. I'm like, I don't want to do this.
I have the
But
reply.
it's just a bad idea to keep it there. Yeah.
Or it's like a hammer count. What in your day or in your personal life or which of your friends is hammering in your mind right now? Is it that friend that
Mm,
you didn't reply in a month and you're feeling very guilty and it could really just take you a bathroom break to reply to them? So getting rid of those hammers really helps with the peace of mind. So call them hammers, call them frogs, is whatever makes it easy to identify it. Like it's the
hmm.
one thing the best possible use of my time right now to reduce stress and reduce pressure and continue
Yeah.
with more like ease of knowing that I can prioritize at my own pace.
It's interesting because so many people look at decluttering, organizing, productivity as like this kind of, I don't know, this hard and rigid thing of structure and organizing and putting Excel sheets or whatever. But the way you explain it here is it's very much as in reducing stress. Like it's feeling in your mind and then okay, how do I get rid of this feeling? And then but then also with the realization that it's not just a single problem. It's more of like the problem is more it's often more part of a system. There's a way to what you say with this monthly financial report. If it annoys me every month, then there's something that I need to fix in the process, not like just today, right? oh, I'm feeling bad with this financial report. Maybe I should meditate more. No, that's not. Problem is in the actual thing you're doing.
And I find that a huge part of our frogs and hammers are in the recurring tasks. The same way that I became a prisoner of being too organized at some point, and I had to learn to let go again. I became obsessive with having the perfect systems of planning your calendar and your to-dos. So I was diving deep into it. First thing you find when you Google productivity, Ali Abdal, to
Mm.
calendar. So I was having the system and I was loving it. And I realized after a few years, I had burnout, serious burnout, and I wasn't finding happiness anymore. And it was because at some point, when I feel like life really goes in stages and we need to be like bamboo, flexible enough to identify them. At some point, my life was a little bit unstable and too many changes, and I craved a system to give me structure and balance, to keep me there every morning, to make me feel like I got this. Worked
Mhm.
very well for years, and I aced at work. And at some point, I became a prisoner of those to do lists and calendars. So I wanted to do something, or I was feeling tired, or I woke up sick, and I would have to face a calendar of things to postpone, which is okay. You do it and you set up the systems to be able to do it, but it still takes an emotional toll on you if your emotion, if you're not like super mentally strong that day. And that if you have to do it over a prolonged period of days, it really takes a deeper toll on you. And I was finding myself, I could no longer control my life. It was me setting those
Mm.
days and it was me setting the calendar. But I had set them so much in advance and I had this that like everything lost its meaning. And I had to enter a phase where I had to create more the opposite of time blocking, like spaces where I
Mhm.
could see that my day was more than half free for me to choose. Even within work, like, yes, okay, I have a block of work, but stop putting so detailed in what of work I was going to do and just giving myself the gift of sitting down and finding what was the frog of the day and from there just doing whatever re energized me. And there is a
Mm.
point where you need to operate at maximum speed and your mind is there with you and you really want to have those systems optimized. Like, I have to do lists that are split into tasks, and the tasks tell me, okay, this is a task that takes between 1 and 5 minutes, 5 and 20 minutes, 20 minutes to an hour. If it's longer than an hour, it really should go in the calendar. It shouldn't go in the to do
Yeah.
list. And so when I have 5 free minutes, I can easily go and find the 5 minute tasks without having to read through the whole list. But at the same time, how do you give yourself the space to have a bad day, or to have a day off, or to have an unproductive day, to have a day where you want to focus, where you just don't feel like focusing on what you thought you would feel like focusing? Because we are humans and we do have to have discipline, and it is a wonderful thing to learn. But too much discipline also leads to missing out on life, right? I think
Mm.
that flexibility is really important, and it's a disclaimer I would give to anybody looking to start into productivity. It's do it and set up the systems and be passionate about them. They're going to hold your back in many times in your life, but also be flexible enough to know that they shouldn't trap you. They are there to help
Yeah.
you, and you can skip them whenever you choose.
I like that because I think for me, I'm not a huge fan of organizing, but I do like things to be like at least a little bit organized. And I'm now definitely working for myself as an entrepreneur because there's so much more happening. I feel like I do feel the need for it. And all the ideas and systems that have attracted me have been these kind of fluid or progressive things. Your time blocking reminded me of this one from Cal Newport, who wrote Digital Minimalism and Deep Work. He talks about he says you should plan every minute of your day, but then replan throughout the day. So he was showing this image of his like it was a physical planner, or it was just notebook, just hour block, and then he had one column and then two column, three column for the revisions of what he's changing, and that's something that I've been like, okay, that makes sense. Like I don't need to be stuck to this, but because you have the structure around it, it helps you focus because you always exactly know what to do.
Yeah.
And then even the times where I'm like, I don't always, oh, most of the time I don't plan my day. But the times I do, it's always like, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do that. And then you estimate the time and it's like, fuck, this is too much for today. And then you can throw it out and then you can still feel good at the end of the day because you're not disappointed by not being able to complete the thing you wanted to do at the start of it. And
That's a
then the
nice
other thing
system.
is just, yeah.
Like he's giving himself flexibility to know this is by no means the plan of the day. It's the intended plan of the day. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
gonna, yeah.
I think it's like a realizing that it's more of a tool to help you focus than a strict thing of what you need to do now. And then also, of course, yeah, the tricks it out adding your free time in there too. People think this is weird when like, what? But you have no time for creativity if you have a schedule. Like, no, but you schedule your creativity.
Right.
People's minds get messed up.
With creativity, it's a bit tricky because you do have days where it's flowing, right? And you have
Mm.
days when you're like, okay, I am here, 2 p.m., creativity time, come to me. And it's just not working. And I think
Mm.
that's a very interesting thing because getting away from planning your day and giving yourself free time should also not fall into not knowing what you're going to do if you have free time. And there are backup plans within the productivity framework where you have a list of things that you want to get done. You always have a to-do list organized by urgency so that if you have some free time, you can tackle the urgent things that become hammers. Some free time, and that free time is really at leisure. You have the life projects like, oh, I've been wanting to set up that home bar. And, let me just sit down and do it. And maybe I had planned to sit down and do some graphic design and it's just not flowing. So I'm gonna go to my list of let's see what feels right now. Do I want to work on my photo album? Nah, not really. Do I want to read a book? Oh, actually, yeah, maybe. Pass the notes of this book and if you have always like a little bucket of things that are not urgent from your happy list that re-energize
Mm.
you, but those things are always time consuming and you don't want to schedule them in because they end up always those are great tasks for when you just need some recharge.
I like it. I'm gonna accelerate. I'm gonna spend the rest of the day like organizing shit. This- How has it been with your mom? Because I assume that she's not a natural organizer either, but now it's clear that you've been doing it with her for more than 10 years. So like something's working.
With her, it's been on and off because it's also been my process of growing from teenager to adult, the whole relationship with the mother thing. So I've been away from her for a huge part of that time. I moved to another continent. But whenever I'm there, I I always take it like, you know, at work, they send you a repetitive tasks of, I don't know, maybe contacting 100 people. And it's not the kind of task that you can really go and copy paste and you're like, Jesus Christ, a hundred
ChatGPT.
people. Yeah, and then a little Python code that sends a message automatically. No, but in general terms, the most basic way to solve it if you don't have the tools is to say drop by drop, every glass cup is filled. Today I'm gonna contact 10 people, tomorrow 10 people, and I'm gonna get there to the 100. And that's really been the approach with my mom, especially when it comes to letting go of things. There's a lot of there's a lot of things that you need to face yourself with, like who you are as a person, what you've done, the things have memories, um, the changes throughout your life, the fact that if you really believe when you're a herder, you really believe that you need those things. And that if you need them again and you don't have them, it's gonna be crisis because you knew you shouldn't have thrown them away. So it's just finding different ways to help her understand that the opportunity cost is higher. So we've done moments where it's just like hard push. It's just, I don't care. You have 2 hours. And in 2 hours, I'm passing by and putting everything that's in the middle of this living room in a trash bag. And I don't care if it's an iPad, it goes to trash. So sometimes you really need to have that pushy approach. And sometimes
Mm.
it's more of just sitting down and saying, I hear you. You have this DJ cabin. They're expensive. And when you want to rent them, they're expensive. But you having them for 15 years in your apartment, cluttering, is costing you part of your rent. And let's make the division. This is how much it's costing you to keep these cabins per month over the past 15 years. Whereas when you have a party and you do want to use them, if you rent them, this is the cost. Plus, you had a decluttered life. and you probably made a better income because you were more at peace of mind. It's finding those different dialogues. Maybe financial is not the way to get to a person, but maybe another ways to talk about the energies.
Mm,
Objects have energies, and each object drags a karma, and they bring you back to those memories that you may or may not want to relive at every single time you see them. I've really tried different approaches with her, and sometimes it's not one approach that works, it's the combination of many, and mainly patience, because I do understand that her change, first of all, she's amazing. She's been super gracious and has let me take the lead, which has allowed me to learn a lot. And, she really goes by the directions and the suggestions and the teachings I share with her all the time. She really allows me to explore that part of me. But at the same time, I understand it is hard for her to change who she is, especially when it doesn't come from her. When someone is trying to, help her see why the change should come, and perhaps she's not fully convinced. I realized that at the beginning, when I was forcing it, it should
mm,
get as bad because she would not understand why. And over the years, I've gotten a little bit more of the maturity and patience. And even now that I'm pregnant and expecting a child, your brain changes, your empathy changes. You're a completely different person. You understand things under a different light. And it's a little bit more of extra kindness and being like, okay, you know what? It's going to be the most unproductive approach ever, but the
mm,
only effective approach. Because sometimes,
mm,
indeed, not at all about productivity. Good if you take the time, even though it took you one whole afternoon to make one little change, just think, okay, what is that biggest change I can make? Because we cannot approach the situation with productivity. We need to approach it with like a different skill set. And because it's not going to be productive, I need to use my productivity to properly prioritize and identify what is the one thing I can do that will have the biggest impact on her. And that has worked much better.
mm. Yeah, because you're asking her to make changes in how she works and actually thinks and does things, but then you don't want to change who she is or what. It's not going to work. Right? It can a little bit maybe, but not too much. Your pregnancy, I want to dive into that deeper because it's super interesting. You're very aware of what it's doing to how you're feeling and how you're spending the day. And you mentioned that it changes the way you think about all of this. So how does that change your approach to to productivity? Are you much more thinking about how am I feeling now, more like energy focused, or how does that work?
The biggest change and like my favorite pregnancy symptom was the fact that I couldn't get stressed anymore. There was one day when I had an out of control to do list, 70 to dos in one day. I was like, okay, let this get really bad. And that had been eating me for a few days. And I was like in panic mode with work because I had at the moment 3 jobs and planning a wedding and everything at once. So it was just all over the place. And when, the hormones started hitting in, I realized I could no longer get stressed. I
Mm,
had been trying through manifestation, through vision boards, through teaching, through watching professors talk about work life balance. I had been trying to bring work life balance into my life, but I had it the wrong way. I was like, yeah, what I want to do this year is find work life balance. And it was always a goal. I was the little dog with the bone hook. I would always run after the bone and never really
oops.
reach it. And I realized it was so funny with the stress gone and still an
Mm.
overflowing to do list, still had 3 jobs to do, had a holiday coming up, had a wedding coming up. I realized this is amazing. First of all, the world will not stop turning, even if my to do
Mm.
list fails and I don't accomplish any of it. Second of all, I didn't need to look for work life balance. If you want work life balance, you start in this very second right now. And it is a matter
Mm.
of we approach life as, and I was thinking about this, meditating on it the other day. We tend to think very easily, oh, I got this. Until I got this becomes, I got this. I got this. until you can no longer get back to what you wanted to do because you were like, yeah, I mean, I would feel much better, of course, if I was taking the sunlight by the pool, but I have so much to do. And you become this from flow to obsession. You're just obsessed with, you're so deep into knowing that you're stressed and out of work life balance that you're just obsessed
Mm,
with it. You're like giving it to yourself. And I think it's important to catch it. Like, if you're there, it is not easy to get out of there, and you need to start, and especially with so many people working from home like I do, go out, find reasons to go out, even though it sounds like the most unproductive thing, like a waste of time.
mm,
Like, on the other hand, it's a matter of it really starts today. Imagine you would fall sick today and couldn't move your hands. What would you do? Nothing. So, if you accomplish one thing today, what is the one thing that you could accomplish that
mm,
would keep your life more afloat? Biggest habit.
mm,
From there, go take a break. Go give yourself the space to breathe and to feel and to be human. And come back and do the second task that can keep your life more afloat. Because all the 70 things on the to do list cannot potentially be that important. You are maybe having there things that you wanted to do for the sake of completion, or things that really you could delegate, or things that people have been asking of you because they just see that you're so productive that they just throw things at you. But if you one day take your right to take long to do things and not reply within 24 seconds, they'll figure out that they could do that themselves without asking you for help.
yeah,
It was really my favorite thing of being pregnant. The fact that I
that's interesting.
realized work life balance was half a second away from me.
Yeah, this is a an experience I've had too when I had my brain surgery and recovering from it. So it was like I think it was 3 months out recovering, and in some part, and your mind is feeling okay. And so it's just like being laying in the couch, just the entire day in the couch, and then the only movement was like at the end of the day, moving to the bed and sleeping there. And I can go frustrated because I'm like, I just want to do things, I want to make things, and I want to move. Where's my workout? So I was like, I had that multiple times. I'm like, okay, let's just do 20 air squats, and then I do them, and it works. And then I had this massive headache for 2 days. It's just and the painkillers didn't work. So that really forced me to realize that, hey, at some point, it's just the body can't keep up,
Mm.
and you have to give in to that. I'm glad you reminded me of that because I now see that in my 9 to 5, I was much more aware of the fact that I needed to take breaks and stop it. And I could think in my mind, like, oh, fuck it. I'm good at my job. It's okay that I walk away for 10 minutes. And I wasn't the only one who did that often. There's so many people in the work, they don't take breaks, they don't walk. But now that it's all on me, it's much more difficult, right? I'm missing 10 minutes on this difference between, I don't know, having another client and not. So thank you for reminding me of that because sometimes you really need to force yourself to
Mm.
stop and take a break. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Could
true.
you, yeah.
And it's not
Do you
easy to
think it
find a
would be,
reason.
oh, sorry.
No, it's not easy to find a reason that's good enough when you're there, when you're in the focus and the flow. But the
Mm,
only reason that really has worked for me is the fact that if you're loving this flow, love it enough to know that if you want to have more of it, you need to have breaks. Because
yeah.
there is no human that's a robot and can continue the same level of productivity. And you may feel so good, like you're gonna be able to keep it up for the whole day, the whole week, the whole month, but you are only human.
Yeah. So I think a big part of being productive is having the right set of habits. And it can be difficult to build them, like to get into a new habit. And I think if one of the key things is building a sense of being happy with having done the little tasks, right? As in, oh, I don't know, spending 5 minutes in the morning to look at your to-do list or to plan the day. Like, if it's a drag, you're not gonna keep doing it. But if you can find a way to reward yourself or feel good about it, that that'll probably help you do it over and over again. How is that for you? Is that something you needed to create, or I'm just curious how you feel when there's like the little moments of you. Maybe it's just natural to you. It's, "Oh, every time I touch my notion, I get happy," or
Not really. I think I love apps. Like I am everybody knows me here in Lagos, like the app girl. Like you talk to Valentina, she'll
okay.
have an app to solve whatever issue. But I also know that I need breaks from apps because they also make you a little bit of like the trackers, the
Mm.
organization tool. So I take like mindful breaks from this app so that when I go back to them, I get surprised. Like, oh, this is really cool how I set it up. Well done. And having breaks from those apps also allows me the perspective of graphic design, which is close the project, come back a day after or a few days after, look at it with fresh new eyes, and see what you didn't see when you were working on it for so long. Like, oh, wait, this makes much more sense if I do it this way. And then you improve the processes because you gave yourself the time for it. And if you're deep diving into it the whole time, you're like just not gonna see it. You're gonna be like a bit
Mm.
tired. But when you mentioned the small tasks, I do have to say there is a little pressure, and that is one of my favorite things is to keep that to-do list of the 1 to 5 minute tasks because sometimes in the day what we need is motivation to remember we get things done and that we're amazing. And it is really for people have different strengths, but based on the different tests, I know about myself that getting things done puts the fire in my belly. So sometimes when let's say my frog of the day is really like a long project of many hours and I need to chunk it into days. It's okay, what do I do now to re-energize from this huge block of time I just spent doing so?
Mm.
It's let's dive into the 5 minute tasks and ting ting, and then you feel, oh yes, it was a productive day. It was an amazing day.
Yeah.
Because you need to understand and be a bit more soft about how you're feeling towards work than how you're actually doing it. And that is a really important thing in productivity, at least for me. It's not only about prioritizing, it's not only about having the right systems. It's about knowing when to take a break from those systems, when
Mm.
not to prioritize, because what you need is a boost of motivation. And when you need motivation, you cannot be told what to do. You need to do what feels best at the moment. Sometimes you're so drained that you don't even know what feels good. So you're like, okay,
Hmm.
buddy, what feels right now? Why do we have a tea looking at the window? Yeah. And you're
I
like,
can feel this one.
whatever. You could have a tea looking at the window. I'm still gonna be tired. You're gonna be like, okay, but the whatever of the tea of the window is better than the whatever of the couch? Yeah, I mean, it's a bit better, but whatever. Okay, so let's go to the window and have a tea. And then after the window and the tea, you're like,
Yeah.
so those have been really like game changers for me to just be
Mhm.
productivity needs to be approached with kindness. And all these apps are amazing. And you need to be approached with a break. It's not only Instagram out there that's dangerous. We tend to obsess and get to use too much, too many apps. All of these apps are amazing, but we should, as humans, know well enough to have a disclaimer to say, hey, I need a screen time break. It's not an
Mhm.
Instagram break because I'm saying to many people, be happy and I'm gonna get no, it's it's also I need a break from seeing the things I haven't done because that's what
Yeah.
to-do lists are. They're always reminding you of what you haven't done. Let me have a break from that and go and look at my apartment, the things that I've created, the home I've built over the past years.
Yeah. I it feels like you've talked with quite a bunch of people and coached them through a process like this. But is that true?
I have ventured into it recently, but in a very
Mm.
informal basis. Not really coached or professionally, but I really enjoy conversations about topics.
What do you see that gives big insights to people, or is like a click in their mind that they make?
I think a lot of the people come to me with the question of, please give me the solution, the one tool that will work, the one tool that will save my life from mess and chaos and clutter. Um, and they're always a bit surprised to hear that there's no one tool that does that. That first of it really is them and their habits. And of course, nobody wants to go. There was a solution that I could pay for on a monthly basis. And on the other hand, everybody like reaches to consult with other people because they're like, I want the best of the best tool and you know about this. And I'm like, there are so many tools that would do the job. Even like
Mm,
Apple Notes is a great note taking app
yeah.
if you use it properly. So at the end of the day, the question is, how into tech are you? Are you somebody who enjoys more places that look visually pleasing, or do you prefer something that's simple and with little options? Because if you're not a techie, giving you a tool like Airtable might be a bit overwhelming to begin. And also, are you working alone or are you working in a team? What is the budget of your team? Is your team and the culture of your team going to be open to implementing a new tool? Because if not, you can have the best tool. It's going to be another burden to carry. So that's what really needs to be figured out with people is first, let's go to the basics. Pen and paper or an Excel sheet, like my favorite, an Excel. Everybody knows how to put their stuff in Excel so they feel comfortable. For me, it's really about helping them see you got this and you know what needs to be done. That if it can be done in a basic tool, then it can be scaled into a nicer looking tool or a
Yeah.
tool that will have a little bit more perks. But you need to understand your system at its core, working on the most basic of the basic tools, because then you will believe that you've got it in you to keep it going.
Yeah, I remember going through this process with Tanya at some point, a mutual friend of ours, where she was like, I think she had her Notion set up to like, I want to track my task and stuff, because in recruiting, there's a lot of things to be done. I think she had gotten some template from the template library, and then you kind of start using it, and it's like, okay, yes, I got the system, and I'll think it out, and it'll be like this, and then you put the task in, and maybe it works for 2 days, and then you're like, oh, it's not perfect, and then you're like, or you kind of leave it behind because it's not. Well, maybe let's make another table that's better now, and then it's just a whole mess, and you don't want to touch it again.
And
And we were
after
talking about,
investing time into it, so you feel even more
oh yeah,
frustrated because you set it up. You're like, "Ooh."
yeah, it's like this was the perfect system, but it's not. But then when I talked to her about this, I said like, but just okay, let's make a new page and just a checklist, just a big old list, and just the brain dump of everything you need to do. And then I'm like, okay, now think of the most important things and drag them to the top, and then I know, add a line for like today and tomorrow. It's like, and it's a bad system if you think about it from a system standpoint. But if you think about it from a usability standpoint, it's so easy to use, and you can you can get the momentum of like, okay, I've got the system. I'm getting used to going to my Notion, looking from that place, and okay, it works for now. I feel like it makes to me it makes more sense to build your own thing because you can gradually go from zero to more complicated systems. I'm not sure what you think about that because I see like template libraries everywhere in all these tools. And a part of me is like, "Oh, that's cool and it looks pretty." I think that's for me one of the big things. Okay, someone put the time and effort in like coordinating the colors and the icons. But then on the other hand, because suddenly it's like this whole thing that arrives, it becomes much more difficult to get used to it because A, you don't know the mindset and the routines that people are using with it, and B, it's not necessarily the same way as you would do it yourself.
Yeah. You know what you said really brought me back to earlier in our conversation when we were talking about the little steps. Like you had a huge like possible list of things to do. Like you're in the middle of it and you must pick one. In the very beginning, when people started reaching out to me for help, I would be like, yes, I want to help this person. Let me give them all the tools and make like videos and Airtable, Notion, LinkedIn. And the person would be so overwhelmed that it'd be like, what? What I want is a you in my life. I want to hire you so you handle this. I was
Yeah,
like, that's brilliant. You cannot help a lot of people that way because there's only one you. I realized for me to now understand that a to-do list is a bad system because you have to scroll through the whole list every day, which is time consuming in itself.
yeah.
For me to realize that I had to go through long to-do lists. But if a person
Mm,
really doesn't know where to start, the best place to start is a to-do list before you get into
yeah,
calendar,
yeah.
before you get into
Like,
so
what's this prioritizing thing?
yeah, before you get into labels and
Yeah.
categorizing it. You need to go through the basics to build the habit and to understand I like the way this is impacting my life, but I feel like there's still there's still something wrong with it. So then they
Hmm.
come back to you again. Fine, you got the
Yeah.
habit, you're liking it. How can we improve so that you're not getting tired with your to-do list? Oh, let me show you this next step of the process. And it is
Mm,
also the same approach I had with my mom. It's just to be patient, kind enough with the process and with the person, and understanding that things need to take time for them to really affect and impact.
yeah. That's a whole different approach to teaching productivity. Like it's changing the model of a course, right? Because when you buy a course, you're like, okay, I've got this 20 lessons. I want to do one every day, and you finish it with that. It's not really going to help you. So you would have more something like a course where you have one video to get started, and then like a list where you come back to 3 months later. Okay, what's the thing that's annoying me now? And then you
Yeah.
get like help on that, and slowly but surely you get to everything. That would make much more sense.
Yeah, and
Mm,
and I think that's the power of coaching, and that's the power of
yeah,
us as humans just reaching out to other humans because we want that one solution, that one subscription a month, that one course that we get. And the reality is in the 3 months we forget to go back to the course. So it really, I think
yeah,
the only way to really get that somebody rescuing us and helping us across to the next like step is to really have somebody guiding us.
yeah. That makes sense. That's been my experience with coaching also all the time. Like sometimes the advice that people give when you're talking to them, it's so simple, but for some reason, it's like it clicks. You're like, oh my god, yes, I need to sleep 8 hours a day. It's the most basic thing, but when someone tells you because they listen to you and they understand you and they know, okay, this is the thing, the one thing you need right now, then that has the impact and that makes a difference.
Yeah. You should, you know, working with so many CEOs here in Nigeria, I realized that a huge portion of them sleeps 4 hours a day. And you see them in the morning, 2 hours at the gym after being late at night in work meetings, networking, having drinks. And it's so hard. And then they try so hard and they're always busy, they're always overwhelmed, and they're looking for systems. And to one of them, I said, I would be harming you if I gave you a system because what you are is exhausted. And giving you another task is taking 5 possible minutes away from your sleep. What you need right now is as basic as what you said, sleep.
Mm, yeah,
And we really sometimes get so into the zone in the CEO is a fast paced world. To be a CEO, it's like Wall Street. It all moves fast, high stakeholders, high stakes, high amounts of money, high responsibilities, high everything. There's at some point no stopping where you can like
yeah,
say, oh, the world is not going to fall because when you're a CEO, a lot of people depend on you so that you do feel more and more the world.
yeah.
And I am just surprised to see the extent to which some people allow the obsession to go and take and bite and consume into their lives. Eventually, they, at some point, even the strongest person, and many of them are so strong, I really admire like, their will to continue going on little sleep, on and so much social pressure, and having to go to social engagements they don't feel like going, and still to go and produce at that level. It's just, it's amazing. And they're really honorable people. They are
Mm,
people that are pushed in all directions to all extremes. They're resilient people. Like, I think any of us who like to optimize our life would very easily get grumpy under those conditions because we like to optimize
yeah,
our life.
yeah.
So it is a different lifestyle. Nevertheless, every lifestyle could really have a one potential thing to change that could make the
Mm.
most impact in just a step towards a better life, a better quality of life.
How have
And
you seen the CEOs that have been through the events that you organize, right? How have you seen them change? Have you seen like some success stories or people who are like, okay, after two or three times, they're like, oh, this is a different person.
yeah, have them eventually go and change one habit and then they need to, because their time is such unlimited one, that they need to
Hmm.
change one habit for the other. And what they do is they take breaks from the exhaustion on one end, for example, sleep exhaustion. They cover nutrition and they focus on nutrition in a few months and a whole season. Then once their body is optimized to nutrition, they go back to focusing on good sleep. And what is that? First of all, they have a beautiful, resilient mind, like the kind of mind
Hmm.
where you get hit by life and you're gonna be okay. You're not gonna react. You're not gonna throw everything out of the window. And on the other hand, they do optimize their time in a way that like they take the different phases and stages of themselves. And they like athletes, they push it to the limit. Athletics, but in career wise. Because you like athletes really push it to the point where they could potentially faint or potentially like something could tear. And that's really also what CEOs do. They take their minds and their patient
Mm.
mental health to extremes that are, of course, difficult to measure and delicate because not everybody really knows when they lost it. And sometimes when you lose it hard. And that's why it is really important. For me, what I realized is we often see CEOs as privileged people that really just have a very good life, and maybe we aspire to be that. I really honor CEOs because many of them are in their life. It's no longer about what they're getting out of it financially or this or
Yeah.
that. It's about the service they're providing. It's about the amount of families working for the company that depend on them. And they keep on going out of their responsibility too. And I really honor that. I really respect that. And that's why I feel like what you're doing is beautiful to just help those people that are operating at those limits find the
Mm.
one thing that could potentially make their life better. It is really impactful because these people, they lead the world. They lead the world through their companies that have hundreds of employees. They lead the world through being opinion makers and influencers in business fields. And it is a different way to impact the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it must be a crazy lifestyle. I can imagine being driven or kind of wished I get that point by the service of there's so many people underneath me. I need to take care of them. I need to make sure they're okay. And then I love what you said about the comparison with it's because this is one of the principles I come back to often is it's this observation that musicians, like pro musicians and pro athletes, there for them it's very normal to pay so much attention to how well they're doing and optimizing everything. But for knowledge workers, like people like us, it's very rare. It's cool that you see that in those CEOs, like those are people like, okay, they take it seriously because, well, they know it. They know they have to. That's nice. Okay, I want to wrap this up with one question. If you could, if you could walk into everyone's office and you could put up a poster like behind their computer, what would you write on it?
I think that's very biased because it will really depend on my current lens of life. But
That's okay.
I
It's a
think
question.
it would be you are just 1 second away from the balance that you need.
Mm, that makes sense. Yeah. It's just walking up to the window, drinking your tea. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I really wish I've tried post-its and I write them in such a deep state of mind and conscious and at a very conscious level. And then I read them and I'm like, oh yes, yeah. Hot quote. How deep, Valentina, bravo. I
I
really
have this
wish
in my inbox in my to-do list. I write things like, "Oh my god, this is genius," and then you write it down, and then 2 weeks later, it's delete.
right.
Like,
You're not sitting to really feel it.
yeah.
You're just reading it and being like, oh wow, Christopher Columbus. So I really wish like those reminders in our wall could come and shake us from our desk and be like,
Mm,
okay, do I have your attention? You are one
yeah.
second away from the balance that you're needing right now. And really shake us and be like, oh wait, yes. Slap on the face or something like that. Like splash of water in the
If this technology would exist where you don't only record what you're saying, but you only record, hey Aaron, you only record you also record the feeling that comes around it. Maybe that we can do it with VR, but that will probably take time to get you in an environment to feel something. Maybe we'll at some point we'll get to like recording your brain state and then playing that back. It'll be so cool. Anyways, we can probably go on for multiple hours here, but I think
We always
one
can.
hour is okay. This was amazing. I absolutely loved it. So
It's
many
always
stories,
amazing to
many
talk to you.
insights. Yeah,
I really enjoyed this, Marcel, and thank you. I really missed our talks.
yeah. We'll do more. We'll do more soon.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Val.
That thing you do, that it's your way of telling people, are you with me? Thank you.
Yes, I feel the thank you. It also it makes me feel more grateful when I touch
Yeah,
this part. So like,
grounding. Yeah, I
yeah,
love that.
because sometimes you can be like grateful, but oh, I'm grateful, but not actually feeling it. So I'm like, okay, if I need to do something physical to really get into that state sometime.
True.
Yeah.
But this is like your act that it this also makes you Mr. Hold the space.
Mm, yeah. Thank you. Okay. I'll stop the recording. Bye, viewers.